Hey everyone, Todd Kale here with Emmanuel Zavios, and excited for each and every one of you to be on live. We are on Facebook, we are on YouTube, and we are on all over the place. And just excited to actually talk today about healing. What is healing? Why do we all need healing? I think personally, it's one of the most important topics that we can talk about because we are broken, imperfect. Even sometimes, we don't want to be evil, but we have evil tendencies. And you look at what's going on right now in America and the right against the left, and there's just so much division. So what we want to do is really kind of maybe shift your perspective of really the myths of what energy healing is. Now, we're going to come from Christian perspectives also as well. We're going to come from Christian backgrounds. I'm going to share a little bit about my perspective of energy healing from my years and years of leadership coaching and training. And then, of course, we have the man, the myth, the legend, Emmanuel Zavios, who is one of the top rated body code practitioners in not just America or Utah, where he's from, but really the entire world. So I'm excited for you guys to be here. I'm excited for you guys to just hear us kind of go back and forth of some of the myths that you might have thought of. Know what energy healing is, but boy, oh boy, could you use it right now at this time. So with that said, Emmanuel, thanks so much for being on. And maybe just share a little of your background. If this is the first time somebody's actually watching you and seeing you, and how did you get into energy healing in the first place?
Sure. So I've been doing this for about 6 years. The modality that I prefer to use and been using for 6 years is the emotion code and the body code, which is discovered by Discover Healing and Dr. Brad and their team over there. And so I also come from, like, my parents come from a medical background. So if there's anybody that's skeptical about energy healing, it would be me, because I have oncologists that are very by the book and, very methodical. But what's really interesting, I do want to kind of mention here, is that for some reason my mother did use alternative medicine while she was working at Kaiser as an oncologist, and for some reason her patients got better and they stayed better. And on my father's side, not so much. He was just kind of like, give as much chemo as you can to someone, and so obviously that's very indicating that energy healing has its place here. And there's just a lot of myths out there that they need to be debunked. And so it's kind of like, we don't luckily we live in an era where they're being more open-minded, but there's still some ignorance out there for sure.
Yeah, there's been some ignorance about meditation for years. I remember, growing up at the Christian church, it's like meditation is for people in California and people that do yoga. But as you even read the Bible, it's like Jesus prayed and meditated. So the two actually, meditation is just a form of listening. I don't think a lot of us listen. Praying is I'm speaking to God, but meditation is just being still. And obviously in the scripture, it says, be still and know that I am God. So there is obviously that meditation is so powerful. And now, obviously in 2020, worldwide, America and Utah and Chicago, all the way to, India, meditation is very accepted. But even just 10 years ago, it was a little bit like, oh, okay, okay there, slow down there, pal. So, that brings me to energy healing. What is do you have like a definition of energy healing? Because I know we're made up of energy, molecules, atoms, and we obviously, just for me to be on this and move my body takes energy. So what is your kind of definition of energy healing, just from your perspective?
So from my perspective, it's really just I really believe it starts off with realizing what we are. So so we have to go into the quantum physics world. Now, I'm not a quantum physicist, but we've all learned that we are all made up of energy. And I love the example of, like, looking at your hand. So you see your hand, and if you were to take a microscope and go down through the skin, you would start seeing bones, and we see tissues, and you see cells, and then you would just see energy, and they're just kind of like sparking around, these little energies. And you'd also notice, which is kind of fascinating, that like a lot of the percentage of our hand is actually non-material. That so that's the really interesting part. But the point is that the greatest discovery is knowing that we have emotional energies and that we're producing them. So I mean, it doesn't really matter. Who cares about me microscoping all the way down to energy? What does that really do for me? Really nothing. I think the main thing is, like, if we're producing emotional energies and they're sabotaging us, then I should know about that. I should know about that in 4th grade or 5th grade, instead of wondering, what is X plus Y equals Z? Like, that's not really important and relevant to my life.
Right. Well, the whole, I think that perspective also is like voodoo, or it could be like a placebo effect. And when you're meeting with like an energy practitioner, and of course you could do it, over the phone. I mean, I do enjoy talking with a practitioner. You could do it proxy as well. But when I actually first did an energy session with you in January of this year of 2020, I didn't really know much about it. I think what got me interested was the book, The Emotion Code, with Dr. Bradley Nelson. And then, of course, the forward was Tony Robbins. So, I was like, all right, when I'm open, I'm not one of those skeptical people. I mean, I'm an entrepreneur. So if I'm skeptical, I'm not going to make a lot of money as an entrepreneur. I mean, let's face it, right? You got to be open-minded to a certain extent. And I was just like, yeah, man, do your thing on me. And I remember having a lot of lower back pain. And it was for whatever, lifting weights or running a lot over the years. And just one session with you, I mean, 2020, I've never really had that pain anymore, but it used to be debilitating, back in the day. But one session with you, you really used the body code on me. And, I walked around, I started to feel less and less pain. So, as far as voodoo and, and is this a scam? I think people just say that because they don't know. And I remember being in business for myself when I first started entrepreneurship. A lot of people said, that company that I first started with was a scam. And then the next one was a scam. And then the next one was a scam. And then, but I've made millions of dollars in these scams. So it must really work. But, we can't obviously listen to that. So I really want to encourage everyone, and you could talk about this, is like being open-minded. And then how you can actually help people see results right away on the physical side. Like, how does that work with the body code, specifically?
Yeah, great. And remind me of that quote that by that German business philosopher, author Schopenhauer. Remember, he said something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what did he say? What was that really powerful quote?
It's something in the very beginning is going to be violently opposed. Right. And then accepted, and then it becomes self-evident. Right. So anytime, like Steve Jobs, back in the day, he was violently opposed in '85 and was fired, but then it became self-evident that he knew what he was talking about and was rehired, and then everyone now has Apple. So it's kind of like that.
I think everyone is going through those stages, especially with something that's new. But I do want to clarify that energy healing isn't new. It's always been around, and it's a really, really old modality. It's just that people look at it as something like new. That's why I always kind of make fun of when there's a new song that comes out, and like my son would be like, oh man, this is a really great song. It's just like, then I'll be like, yeah, it's like the Beatles did a song like this too. It's like, oh cool, the Beatles did a version of this song. I'm like, no, the Beatles wrote this song, and like this is just like a copy of it. And I think that's what's happening right now, is like everyone's looking for like answers of like, why do I feel stuck? Why am I being held back in relationships? And these questions are not being answered by just the regular methodical thinking that's coming. And I always get kind of intrigued with the fact that I love this quote. It says like, you're either right or you're rich, but you can't be both, by T. Harv Eker, because he said that more people are looking to be right. And the problem with that is that why are you so broke in that area if you're right? And so if you want to be rich, you have to be wrong, And so the way you're saying, you're like, is there a way that the body code can work with pain? And the reality is like, that's like the first area I target, is like, if I can lower someone's pain down, and someone who lives 10 states away from me, and I can target certain emotional energies that came at certain ages, and that he can even recognize that, wait, that's when this happened. Wait, this is when this happened. This is when this happened. All of a sudden the pain goes down. We have someone who's now a believer of something that actually works. And for those people who are like, well, it's got to be a placebo effect. Well, there's nothing wrong with placebo. See, placebo is scientifically proven that it does. The mind is mind over matter. That's a good thing. So I don't care if someone says there's some placebo effect. Great. I mean, whatever it takes, Yeah. On top of that, the reason why you know that it's more than placebo is that I work with children, and the children are not in the room. So how is that a placebo effect with the child? Or if I work with an animal, I don't talk dog. So how would the dog be healed if the dog's not even there? And so. So that's how I kind of prove to people that it's not a placebo effect, is that if I'm working on children, I've never shook their hands, I never talked to them, how are they receiving these amazing changes that the parents are going like, what is happening to my child, unless there was actual energy being released from them?
Well, that's amazing. And I encourage everyone that if you haven't tried this, it's pretty amazing. And of course, it's both in the modality of the emotion code, which really deals with trapped emotions that we all have. and then also the body code. And trapped emotions can get into your organs. It can get into your physical body. And, I've always been a believer that disease, like cancer even, comes from our thoughts. And, the Bible says thoughts become things, and it's just, think and grow rich. And it's kind of scary, but at the same time empowering to know that we can control our thinking. But Emmanuel, what happens when someone's very closed-minded? And let's talk a little bit about religion. Let's talk a little bit about spirituality too. I'm not a religious person. I'm not affiliated with a religion. I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. That's the most important thing in my life. In fact, since me and you have really partnered, I've never been closer in my walk with the Lord, personally on a spiritual level. And it's been a hard year for a lot of us. And I really hope everyone does have something that they can believe in other than themselves, because we all have, love yourself, and you are the creator of your own universe, but we are flawed people. And it's kind of because your heart is not always right. So if our heart was always right, then follow your heart, you'd probably, do some very bad things. And so how does the emotion code, body code come into hand in even our spiritual life? Because I've heard a few people say, well, my pastor, or, I don't know if I believe in healing because only Jesus was the only one that could heal people. And of course, you have a great rebuttal for that. But just on a serious note, like, I love to just kind of chat about that, because I know people probably are, thinking the same way.
Yeah, so healing is a very loaded word, but so is also like big pharma. So big pharma is also a very triggering word, because the reality is like, again, everything will make a lot more sense if people just kind of stood back and looked into the context of things. Even when you read the Bible and the good book, you're talking about like a Nazarene time, Jewish times. There was a lot more. For example, right now we live in a microwave society. So if I were to tell my son something, he'd probably forget in a week. That's not how our great grandparents way back there in Jerusalem used to act. They used to have oral traditions. And they've done studies where, like, oral tradition can get passed down 10 generations. So if someone says, this story matters, remember this, it was like in their blood that they remember it 10 generations deep. We don't do that.
Yeah.
See?
Wow.
So if you don't, so that's why some people, you can't believe in the Bible because someone wrote it, someone wrote a witness of it 20, 30 years later. But see, if you understood oral tradition, you're like, oh, wait, that person could have memorized it because they just had different memory back then. You see? And so that's the same thing with now. It's like, I really feel like, it comes all down to context. And so when I look at energy healing, I just look at it as a tool, similar to how a doctor has a scalpel or has his own little machinery that he uses in surgery. Would you rather use those tools, or would you rather use something that's already inside of you, almost like a car tune-up system that's already built in? And really what it is, by removing certain energies, you're allowing the immune system to heal itself. So it'd be kind of like if you leave a scar, or if you leave something that's kind of like a wound in the on the skin. I mean, you and I both know that if we take care of that wound, it will heal itself. So we do have a self-healing mechanism. But if there's blocks in front of it, then if you can remove those, you can make someone heal faster. So who's really doing the healing here? It's actually the body is just healing itself, but you're just removing things to make it faster, more efficient.
Exactly. And like you said, it's a modality, just like, there's so many different modalities out there, and you see chiropractors, and of course, Dr. Bradley Nelson, comes from the background of being a chiropractor. He's also a person of faith. And, he says like one of the greatest discoveries really in human history is the heart wall, and removing the heart wall. This is a very serious topic, not serious, not like serious, but it's serious in our lives, because the consequence of not healing is too much to bear. When somebody is getting older and they don't focus on their healing, and they're just blaming and they're victimizing and vilifying other people. Well, my dad did this to me, or I was sexually abused, and I got raped. And even though these things really happened, physically abuse, emotional abuse, there is a time where you do have to just take ownership of that, and just not that it was your fault or anything, but you've got to be open and vulnerable and start that healing process, because your next generation, your children and their children and their children, it's this ugly cycle. It's this, if I'm inheriting my dad's anxiety from his dad and his dad, and 53 generations before me, that is inherited. That's a real thing based on science. Even if you never had a bad life, you still could be filled with depression and anxiety inherited. So what happens when you're 39 like me, and it's like, you can't control your emotions, but you don't know where to turn. So you're like, okay, I'm going to go buy a book on Amazon. Nothing wrong with that. I'm going to go listen to this podcast. But isn't there a way, Emmanuel, where we can actually get really confused if we don't know what modality that we need to help, because we're getting all this information, different perspectives? What happens when that happens? And then also, how can we make it simple, or like more simplified, with someone like you, or practitioners, and really be able to go take action on our lives? What would you recommend?
That's a great question. I think that there's a very common word now, a term being used right now, which is like resonating. Like, I resonate with that. I don't know if that comes from people that go into the energy healing field. They're trying to resonate with people. Here's something that resonated even before energy healing is becoming more and more popular. Is like, I resonate with this book's message. I'd like to flip it on you and kind of ask one question from you, because I know you're a huge advocate of self-development. And there was someone that wrote a book. I don't know if you saw the interview with Mark Victor Hansen and someone else. And the guy wrote basically that self-development is a scam. And then Mark Victor Hansen went on the news to kind of like debate him, going like, it's a scam. Like, who are you? And Mark Victor Hansen obviously is a huge author, and he's helped a lot of people out. But he used a really good example. He said the fact that he's like, if you take a shower, is that enough for you to live throughout your life? And he says that reading a self-development book is like taking another shower. Like basically our brain needs a wash, not brainwash, but our brain needs a wash. But there comes a point where it's just not enough. Is it possible that you can be like in the scriptures, it says ever learning, like learning, but then not really, like it doesn't integrate. There's no integration. And and I know you, for example, you've already had success with self-development. How is it for you how are you combining your self-development past, where you resonated with John C. Maxwell and some top people, but then you're like, whoa, this energy healing side almost kind of like takes the pressure off you from the self-development where you had to constantly, consciously do something about it. Now you're kind of allowing the body to do it itself. I'm just curious, like, how was your transition with like combining your growth with body code?
Well, when it comes to self-help, it starts with self-awareness. Not everyone needs the same book. Not everyone needs the same modality. Not everyone needs the emotion code, body code. I mean, not everything is for everybody. But for me, it starts with self-awareness. And if you don't have that, that's where you get in big trouble. So for instance, you and me, let's say we're opposite. Let's say I'm very naturally angry, anxious, and aggressive, and you're just the nicest guy in the world. Well, let's say you get cheated on and I don't, but you're going through kind of a similar pain, and I'm going through other pains because I'm, kicking ass and sometimes too aggressive, and you're just too nice, So it's like we're going through pain, but it's like two different self-awarenesses. Does that make sense? Your self-awareness is like, dude, I got to like have more confidence. I have a confidence issue. Like, people are just abusing me, and I'm more of an abuser in a way. Does that make sense? So it's like we have to just come to the self-confidence where one book is not going to be great for both of us, other than, I would say, the Bible, right? But so that's that. But it's also receiving it. And I think there's so much pride, there's so much ego in the world today that people are just not open to be honest. And I'm not talking about like men or women. I'm talking about both. But when it comes specifically to men are hiders. They lie. They hide things, and because they don't want to tell the truth, not because they're just bad people. It's just because they don't want to be shamed. And even women, like, you look at like a woman versus a woman. It's highly competitive, and a lot of people don't get this. Oh, my girlfriend. You got to be wary who your wife's girlfriend is. I'm telling you, because it could be your worst nightmare, because your wife is like, like trying to compete with her, and they go get, boob jobs and lip jobs, and now you don't even recognize your wife after a year. I mean, I've seen it happen, and they're in competition with each other. So when you humble yourself and say, look, I want to be the best version of myself, like no BS. What do I need to work on? And find an inner circle of 2 to 3 trusted, non-competitive, loving people. In fact, I reached out to 1 out of my 3 today, and I just asked them, could you pray for me? Could you stand with me and pray for me in this battle that I'm facing right now? Because I trust him. He's not going to go tell a friend that I did that, and he's not going to go tell a friend that I'm in this situation. So, you have to have 3 people that are really championing you on your journey. But personal development at the end of the day is your vision. Like King Solomon says, without vision, people perish. And if you don't have a strategic, clear, incredible vision that's not just from the imagination, but an actual vision, like you're a business owner, you're the CEO of your own life, what is your mission statement? What is your vision? Then you want to know, okay, what are the tools? So personal development is just the tools on my journey. What can I grab here? What can I grab there? Who do I need to get out of my life? Who do I need to add to my life? How can I make this journey more effective? But then you also have people that are just all over the place. They sign up for these companies like network marketing, like where me and you come from. And now that we're in it now, but we're obviously an Inside Out Institute. But I'm just saying where we got our start, they would go to all the events, read 100 books a year, take all the notes, but they couldn't make a sale. And when you really interview them, you're like, okay, why can't you just make a dang sale? Well, come to find out, they haven't even tried. It's not like they've getting rejected. It's not like they're getting a bunch of no's. Go for no, get 100 no's. They don't even go for one no.
Right.
Because they're just so paralysis by analysis. Right. And that's not good either. So I just feel like everyone's different when it comes to personal growth. We do have universal truths. We're beings, we're spiritual beings, and should be on the same page with certain things, but our journeys are all going to be different. So that's why personal growth is not a scam. I wouldn't be around anyone that doesn't want to grow. I pray. It's just so sad, because you'll never reach your full potential if you don't want to grow. That's like being a Lamborghini and never wanting to get gas, never wanting to fill your tank and never go for that spin on a Lambo because you don't believe in putting gas in your Lamborghini.
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned a nice car too, not like a Toyota Corolla 86 or something. So that's right. But I think also the main concern too is I think when it comes to scam or negative intentions, for some reason, I don't know what it is, but it's like the male goes like, that's gotta, and again, I think it's because they're afraid of shaming. They're also afraid of like sharing their dark secrets. Like they're not really used to that. And and people used to ask me all the time, man, hey, why are you making all those YouTube videos? I'm like, because the women keep complaining about how their man is not open to this type of work. Right. And so I really had to target their pain and be like, I got to lower this guy's Achilles tendon pain. If I don't do that, he's really not going to believe in it. But there's nothing that drives me up the wall more or annoys me more when a guy says, I don't need this, fix her. It just does something to me. I can't even handle it, because the reality is that, Michael Jackson's right. You got to look at the man in the mirror. Technically, you attracted her into your life. So there's work to be done on your side because you attracted her. Right. But people don't like to hear that. I don't like to hear that I attracted someone that is a horrible person in my life and maybe caused me a lot of havoc. But it makes sense. If you think about all the skeletons in your closet and you're kind of like throwing up your skeleton up there, someone's gonna be like, I got some same skeletons too. And the way Dr. Brad said, I love how he says it. He's like, two people come up to each other, they have a same color of luggage and they just get in the same size. And they're like, hey, we have the same luggage. Like, let's get married. I mean, that's really what is happening.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought the men up, because women are so good at being open-minded and wanting to heal. And as obviously being a co-founder of our institute, we have mostly women as clients, and I enjoy it. I love it. Obviously there's bad women out there and there's great women out there, just like bad men and great men. But we really are attracting the working woman, the woman that is not wanting to wait for her husband to write her a check so that she can go do something. She makes her own money. She's a wonderful mother if she has children. Maybe it's even the single mom that is just very driven to provide a great income for her family. I mean, we love those women. But when the men come, I would just say men, like, here's two men right here that fairly good looking guys. I work out. Manuel is a really awesome dude. Like, it's so cool when a man raises their hand and says, look, I'm flawed. Like that right there. If you want to get a girl in 3 seconds or less, admit the truth that you're not this burly, strong Gaston from Beauty and the Beast. Like, it was the beast that got Belle. Does that make sense? It was the one who was, and didn't believe in himself in the beginning and was so stubborn, but finally opened his heart in the movie Beauty and the Beast, which is my favorite Disney movie, and just was able to connect. Even though he wasn't the attractive guy, he was a beast. So if you kind of look at yourself as a beast, that still keep part of that. That's masculine, that's good, fight for your family, fight for your beliefs, but be open in your heart to receive and to listen, and also not put up with some crazy women's crap either, but you will attract the right woman that is open and really is because that's attractive when a man actually can raise their hand and say, I need help. And they don't feel sorry for themselves. They're just more aware and they're taking full responsibility and they want to get healed. And that's going to change their generation, especially if they have a son. Their son is really going to not be like them, as far, they're going to be open, they're going to be more loving. But you still keep your masculinity. You still keep that strength. And, I know we live in a very kind of a feminine is a masculine and a masculine is a feminine now. And if we could just keep our own, I'm a man and you're a woman kind of thing, then I think we can really come together a lot better.
I think too, like one of the things that's really interesting is that I really believe most of the myths were created by men so that they can avoid their own healing. I mean, and I think because if it's a scam, then I don't have to look at myself.
Yeah.
If I'm a Christian person and like oh, that's energy healing, then I don't have to look at myself again.
Yeah.
So again, it's like it's a safeguard for them not to be vulnerable. That's my personal opinion. And so because again, I really feel for some reason I remember there was an event where I believe some lady had a question for Dr. Brad and said like, hey, I just have a question. Can I work on my husband without his permission? Can I do energy healing without his permission? And he got really emotional and like because he says, you don't know how much that question pains me as I travel all around the world of so many women that just don't have that man to be open-minded. And here's the reality to men. If you're a man out there and you're listening to me, you will be left behind. If the woman starts growing, you will not recognize her within a year. If she's consistent with maybe she does healing every single week, you guys will not resonate with each other anymore. And that's why I feel like hopefully one day the government endorses, like, before you get married, you guys both need to go through a healing journey for like 6 months. Both of you guys remove your heart walls. And if you guys still love each other after 6 months, then maybe it's meant to be. If we did that, the divorce rate would go all the way down to 21%, 14%, 13% for sure. But the problem is we're going in here with a ton of baggage and we're going like, hey, I'm coming unarmed. Like, let's just start a new house. And she's like, I'm coming unarmed. But then you go in the house and there's just machine guns everywhere and there's just a bloody mess. That's basically what happens. And it's really unfortunate.
Well, let me end this interview with the last question here. That's piggybacking off this because this is very important question. And I've dealt with this personally. It's very heartbreaking when your partner doesn't want anything to do with it. I mean, literally your partner. And I get it. There's a response. It's almost like being a Christian, right? So you have like an atheist and you have a Christian, and one person believes in God, one person doesn't. This atheist, that doesn't mean they're a bad person at all. It's just, but what if the atheist saw the Christian like so loving and there's something different about them? So maybe, hopefully the atheist is like, maybe I should, maybe I should take another look at this because this person's example is just truly a mark. But that might take a year, that might take 2 years. So that's what's kind of scary with a married couple or someone in a partnership is like, what if someone starts healing and really takes off? Are they really going to wait around for that husband or wife to be open a year later, 2 years later? What have you found from your experience in this particular subject?
Yeah, so with that, and I'm going to talk mainly to ladies because I think this is more of a ladies thing, but it could be a man thing. My favorite thing to do is to work with someone who is unbiased. And what I mean by that is that the woman, they may tend to over-exaggerate themselves so in order for the man to notice, what are you doing over there? But for the man to kind of like really open up their eyes, it's the children. If you work with a child and the child changes in front of the man's open now all of a sudden. So that was my favorite tactic. I was like, do you have a child? They say, yeah, I have a kid. Great. What's their biggest, most annoying symptom that the father knows he has? Then I would go in there and work with that child. And once that son doesn't have it anymore, the dad's like, what's going on with him? It's like, he used to only say 3 words. Now he's saying 16. Like, what happened in just a week? You know? And then she says, oh, it's that thing that you really don't have high regard for. And then that's where they go, well, maybe this thing works. I remember a gentleman, a young kid who, it's really sad. He was adopted, and his real mother was a meth addict and was physically abused. I've never seen so many heart walls in the trimester time because the mother was going through war. And he was just a stone cold guy. And I just remember the father taught, hey, I just want you to know my son is completely different. And I hold resentment to him because of all the trouble that he's given me. He's called like child protection services on me when I've given him so much. And I literally hold this heavy resentment, but I've seen him change. I'm now open to clear my wall because I want to know what you did to him. I know that I have some things too. It was the most beautiful moment I've ever seen. So, but I really, for those tips for those women is work on the child, work on the child, work on the dog, work on something that's highly non-biased. And then the husband sees it and you'll see the husband all of a sudden be open.
That's amazing. And what if they don't have a child?
They don't, then find the dog. And if they don't find the dog, trust me, it is true too. Even if you work on a woman, there are going to be just some noticeable differences. And so I think the man over time will see it, and I really believe in the softening of hearts law. So, if you pray for your husband and say, hey, obviously the intention to the creator is like, I want this person to grow with me. Can you please soften his heart? In fact, who was a very perfect example of that made a movie out of it was Lee Strobel. Lee Strobel was the most stubborn Chicago Tribune reporter who did a two-year investigation on whether Jesus was the Christ, and he went through the most methodical. Well, can we trust this stuff, and can we trust this, and who are eyewitnesses of it? And the whole time, what was the wife doing? Going to church, praying, reading, and praying that his heart softens, and then it happened. And I really believe that's a very powerful principle. If you ever want anyone to kind of open up to any idea, you can literally pray, and that prayer is a real prayer. And that person over time may not be like in a month, maybe in 6 months, but then that person will be opened up one day. You'll be like, wow, I've been praying for this for 6 months.
Well, that's amazing. And I'll just mention this and we can end it. Prayer is powerful too. So to have this modality, and we also have KPIs too. It's like your physical health, or you can even call it pies, right? Your physical health, your intellect, your emotional, and your spiritual. I would say the most important is really the intellectual part, and also the emotional part. So, understanding and that's where all that comes from, your emotional fitness. Of course, your physical body is just, so if you really focus on that, that's kind of where really where it's at. And it really opens up a lot of doors. But as far as just spiritual life, I just want to say this one point. Sometimes we're afraid to pray, maybe because specific prayers, but I really have been studying prayer. And let's say you have a cheating spouse right now, and you're so angry at them. You could literally pray that the person that they're cheating on with, like her tires, pop, and then they can't meet each other today. And then that something happens where I'm not saying trying to be mean, but God, it's like you can pray prayers that bring a spouse back to you. It only takes 1 out of 2 to fight for your marriage or even a partnership or whatever. And you can pray like for the softening of someone's heart and just have faith that could happen. Now, we all have free will, so you can't, expect it to happen if it doesn't, but it's okay to pray prayers like that. I'll kind of say this last thing, but there was a teacher that said something to me all the time, and it annoyed the heck out of me when I was in high school. And he would sign my book. He would buy me John Maxwell books, and then he would sign it, "I hope God messes up your life." He always said it. He kept saying, "I hope God messes up your life." And I thought it was a negative thing, but that's in the messing up your life. That's where you're going to fall on your knees. And that's when you're going to open up to the personal development. We are so comfortable as a society. We're so comfortable as couples and stuff that we don't want to do the work when things are good. Yeah. But you're either growing or declining. And that's why people like Emmanuel and people like myself are both the subconscious and conscious. We keep you going regardless if things are good or if things are bad. We'll always get you back up there, of course, with all that we're doing. So it's just important to know that I hope God messes up your life, people, because that's when you're going to grow, and that's when you're really going to make a significant move that could really define the rest of your life and your destiny.
I mean, I couldn't say it better. I mean, is there a mic drop here? I don't think you even have a mic over there. But yeah, I totally agree, and I really think, again, all these myths that we're talking about earlier. Here's the thing: is we need to do our diligent research. And I think that's what people lack, is like, they look into something and then they, it's like, here, this is the one that just hurts me. It's like, okay, here's another one. I don't want to share this last one here. So many energy healers were killed and this is on the news, and they died mysterious deaths. Like this woman writes a book on cancer. She's hanging in her garage. Strange. A guy writes another book, writes something, whatever. He shoots his friend shoots him in a river. It's like strange. And then over like 3 or 5 years, it's over like 130 like very powerful healers that somehow mysteriously died. But then you go, well, this can't be true. Let me look up Snopes. It's like, really? You're going to go to Snopes to like figure out if this is real or not? Do you know who Snopes is funded by? Again, just people just don't do their diligent research, and just in general, just you should look into it and be like, well, what is this? Like, let me try to find 10 different areas where I can find research, then pray about it, and then come up with that information, then make an assertion. But just don't just take off one biased media thing and say, well, this has got to be real. And so now
Right.
that's the problem with the information age, is that there's so much false information with the right information, and we're having issues with discernment. So if you ever hear any negative thing about energy healing, just know there's 10 people that know what they're talking about. You may want to talk to them first before you talk to someone who has never experienced it, or who has just biasness towards it.
Absolutely. Well, Manuel, if anyone's like more interested, we can definitely talk with them. We have people, I don't know what we call it. We got not a hotline, if you will, but we got a line of communication where if anyone wants to talk to one of our strategic enrollment coaches, advisory members, they can do that. So if you guys are interested in really having a more conversation about how this can really help your marriage, how this can help you as a person, go ahead and drop us a line in the comment section, and we'll have one of our advisory board members just contact you. And it's all free, of course. There's no commitment at all. And what they really assess is what hell you're going through right now and how we can potentially get you some heaven in your life. Because let me just be honest, I mean, it's like when you're by yourself and you're dealing with pain, it's the worst. You need help. And your sister and your brother, they might not be the best people. Your own parents, they might not be, they're always going to be biased, okay? Most cases. So to have someone that's even a stranger to show you love and walk you through, your challenge, your hell, to maybe get you some heaven, I'm telling you, it's worth its weight in gold. So go ahead and drop us a line if you'd like someone to reach out to you right away this week and have, I guess, what we call a discovery call to really discover really who you are and where you want to go and how we can really help you. And that's what we're really all about. And that's why we do this every single Wednesday. So thanks so much, everyone, for watching and being on. Emmanuel, any last words here?
Yeah, just know also too, we're going to be doing this every single week at the same time. We're going to have new topics. You can keep following us. Well, it's like your little show for the week to kind of add some value during this very nervous, anxious time, right?
Yeah.
And also, just yesterday, I did a healing session on someone's foot pain, and then this first time I met him, his name is Ron Doyle, lowered it from like a 7 to a 0. And I also helped him to have less anger in his relationship. If you haven't seen that, go ahead and go on this page and look for it, and then check that out. And I'll be doing a healing every single Tuesday. So we really want to provide value for you guys. And if you guys can do me a small favor, tag anyone that you think would appreciate this message. Again, trust me, you may not see the visual blessings in your life, but anytime you share some information with someone, I mean, if it wasn't for a book that came to me and said, Emotion Code, what's this all about? We wouldn't be here. If Todd didn't have certain mentors or watch a certain video, he wouldn't have done certain things. So you never know how information can bless someone's life. So make sure you do that.
Absolutely. Well, thanks everyone for watching. Looking forward to really adding value to you, and we'll see you next time. Thanks so much for being on the broadcast.
Yep. Thanks.